Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join today's session. So, title is up on screen. Hopefully, we won't be taking the full hour here, and that will leave time for some questions if there is any towards the end of the session. So, without further ado, we're just going to jump straight in. We've got a good attendance. I can see some familiar faces as well as some new ones. So, welcome for those who are new here. My name is Luke Elston. Microsoft Practice Director at CyberOne. My responsibilities broadly are just to do everything related to Microsoft, so to keep pace with Microsoft, to understand what they're doing with their technology, and to make sure that we are aligned internally and delivering services around all the great stuff that Microsoft do. So on the left, you can see the agenda. Broadly speaking, we're going to be largely talking about agentic AI today, as well as Microsoft 365 E7 and how that relates to that agentic conversation. That's the broad sort of theme for this session. In terms of why we're covering this material and why it matters to yourselves, I imagine, I always like to start these things with some statistics up on screen. So I won't go through all of them. I'll let you read some of those in your own time. A few that stand out to me, though, particularly the one on the far left, is really significant. So, according to CyberArk, who of course are an identity product vendor, they're claiming that there is a ratio of 82 to 1 agentic or AI identities compared to humans. So there's 82 AI-based identities and only one human. That's pretty staggering if true. And if that trend continues, that ratio is only going to become more extreme. And today we'll be talking about why that matters and actually some of the risks that will potentially impact your organization because of that prevalence of AI. Other stats that are very important to understand is frankly that lots of employees within our organizations are using AI without the knowledge of our security teams and without approval. That's known as shadow AI. Again, a topic I'll explain a little bit more about later. So some quite significant bits of information on screen. There's of course lots more out there. There's all kinds of metrics and stats I could have pulled, but I didn't want to bore us to death with endless percentages and figures. So I will just briefly acknowledge Mythos. Mythos obviously is a really significant news story at the moment. This session is not going to be a deep dive on what Mythos is. That is a future bit of content that we'll be looking to do. We have put some news posts and blogs out already on Mythos, so go ahead and read those. But we can certainly look at doing a webinar as well in the near future. So in terms of what Mythos is, just for those that are not aware, it is essentially an advanced vulnerability discovery tool. It's focused on not only discovering the vulnerabilities, but then generating the exploits to actually perform the attack against those vulnerabilities, and that's part of its danger. There are other tools like Mythos that have existed before Mythos even, but it's claimed that Mythos is one of the most prevalent of all of them. The reason that I'm mentioning Mythos is it's obviously related to the AI conversation, but you know, a missed opportunity for me to mention that we are focused on Mythos as a company, and we are building some capability around Mythos in terms of defensive posture, in terms of what you might want to do to mitigate a Mythos-like cyber attack. So please do look at our news feeds. We'll be posting some content, and I'll also talk about this towards the end of the session as well. So without further ado, the shift to agentic AI and what it means for your organization. So I thought it would be important just to define first what I mean by agentic AI. And to do that, I'm going to explain traditional AI. So traditional AI, think of it like ChatGPT, okay? Traditional almost implies that it's historic, but obviously it's not historic. This is all recent developments over the last number of years. So I'm calling it traditional AI. That's not to say that it's old or unsophisticated. LLMs like ChatGPT or Copilot are very, very powerful. It's just that the, excuse me, functionality is slightly more limited than an agentic AI. So traditional AI is focused around chat and search, summaries, those kind of activities. Whereas if I bring up agentic AI, it's much more autonomous, okay? The idea is that it is able to perform actions and achieve goals based on a set of instructions. It's less about producing an output and more about producing what we would call outcomes. So an agent can reason, it can think. Like I said, it has autonomy, it can perform workflows. Agents can also access systems and data, and that's one of the key risks that we'll learn about later. And of course, it can make decisions and interact with other agents. So what we're seeing more and more now is that if an organization was to build, let's say, 20 agents, actually those agents would be working in harmony to achieve a greater goal that's larger than the sum of the parts. And that's the general trend in the industry as well, in that agents are being built in a more bespoke way to perform particular tasks very well. And then you glue multiple agents together to complete a much more large and complicated task. Again, the sum of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. So just to give you an example of the workflows here. So in terms of traditional AI, it's very simple. You have your user that provides an input into Copilot or ChatGPT. That AI then essentially responds to that input and generates an output. Now that what's actually happening there is the AI is ultimately doing a search. It's searching the web, in the case of something like ChatGPT. In the case of something like Copilot, it's searching the web and also your internal resource as well. So if you're not aware of that, that's an important risk to be aware of. And you should be governing your data with Purview to mitigate Copilot's access to your corporate data. That's an aside for now. And that AI is trawling those web sources, those internal sources, and essentially compiling information together and providing you with an output. And it is just an output, okay? The AI hasn't done any particularly intelligent activity here. It's an advanced form of search. It's an advanced form of summary. Yes, it has a large database of information to draw on, but traditional AI is not reaching unique conclusions on its own, okay? It is not coming up with brand new ideas. It is simply replaying things that already exist out on the web or within your internal data, and it's replaying them in a way that kind of gives an opinion, an output. And that's the flow of traditional AI, very simplified. Um, if we then look at the agentic AI flow, it's a bit more complicated. So typically, a user will provide a goal to the agent. I want you to go and achieve A, B, C, D. The agentic AI component itself will understand that goal, so it will interpret what the user has asked for, and it will make a plan, and it will then execute on that plan to reach the desired outcomes. In terms of the next stages, the next parts of the workflow, what it will look to do is access systems. So again, this is one of those risk elements that we'll learn about soon, but this agentic AI, without any governance in place, without any way to restrict its behavior, it will go ahead and access any system that it can reach. So it can go ahead and access your data. It might go and access a critical server. It may go and use APIs. It may browse out to the internet and access some information there. It may expose your data to the internet as well because it thinks that's the correct approach to reach its goal. And ultimately, it will do whatever it needs to achieve that goal. It will access whatever systems it needs to. And as part of that flow, it will obviously be executing actions. So that plan that it devised in that second step, there'll be a number of actions in there, okay, in order to complete the goal. And the goal could be anything from send an email to my top 10 contacts on LinkedIn to I want you to lock down my entire environment because of this security risk, and anything in between. It will plan a set of actions to reach that end goal. And like I said, what it's trying to achieve is an outcome. It's not providing an output. Okay, it's not simply responding to a prompt. It's actually trying to achieve a goal and have outcomes out the back of that. So that's the high level workflow of a typical agent. So hopefully we've set the scene now, and I want to talk about actually first and foremost the opportunity, because I don't want to be doom and gloom. I don't want to be focused on risks, although that is coming. I want to talk about the opportunity that agentic AI brings to you. And to do this, I've actually refactored a piece of internal document that we use in CyberOne, and I've sort of changed it a little bit just for it to be more suitable for this session. And what I'm going to show you is sort of the past, present, and the future of what I'm calling AI augmented teams. So we've all seen the news stories, and some of us may be personally concerned about AI, replacing people's jobs, and that kind of rhetoric is very significant at the moment. I would say actually I disagree with that. I think the opportunity is to augment our human teams with AI. It's to make the humans better through the use of technology, not to replace them. That is my opinion. And generally, the view of Cyber One, it's how we approach our use of agents internally as well. So if we look at the past on the left-hand side, this is, and the reason I'm referring to this as the past is if you're not at this stage, I think you're lagging behind. Um, Certainly ourselves are well ahead of this phase of sort of AI adoption, as are many organizations. And if you're not quite here at phase one, or you're maybe in the process of it, you could be lagging behind your industry peers. So I just wanted to highlight that. Now, in terms of what this phase one actually is, it's using things like traditional AI, so ChatGPT, Copilot, similar LLMs to those, to give your team a kind of AI tool belt and a co-pilot or an assistant, you might think of them. And it's to basically make their jobs a little bit easier. So it's to do things like take meeting notes when you have a Teams meeting, or to summarize a long email thread, or to maybe even author a response email so you don't have to type it manually. It's those kind of smaller tasks that are performed by traditional AI very well. Those are the things that really you should already be doing in your organization and should be have adopted by this point. Like I said, if you're not quite there yet, it indicates that you're lagging behind. If you're not there, I'm going to wager a guess that one of the reasons will actually be around your concerns about data security. And that's a fair point. I would say that any conversation around AI also must be a conversation around data security. Those are one and the same. This session is not going to go deep on that. We did a webinar a couple of weeks ago on that exact topic. So please go ahead and look at that one. So that's phase one. It's using those traditional AI components, those LLMs, to assist your human team. Now, if we move into the present sort of phases, we then have the idea of using AI agents as a kind of digital worker. Okay, so again, we're not looking to replace the human team. We're actually looking to give them more colleagues in the form of these digital workers, these AI agents. So the human sits alongside the agents, and their colleagues, right? They work together to complete a task. That's the idea, is that again, that augmentation of the human team with AI. So think digital workers. So the agent is performing, a simple task. It could be something like every Friday, go ahead and generate, the sales report for the last period. It could be something like that. The agent is just performing a function of that human's job, just one part of their job, ultimately making it easier for the human to do what they need to do. So it's very much that augmentation piece, like I've said. Now, if we move into phase three, we then have a different approach, a slightly more mature approach. And this is where the number of agents we have is increasing. And rather than being a direct colleague of the human is almost like the manager of the agents at this point. So they are growing a sort of team of agents that is helping them perform their job function. So yeah, they've got the agent that gets the sales data every Friday. Maybe they've got an agent that sends out a bunch of emails automatically at different periods in the week. Maybe they've got another agent that, I don't know, automatically updates their calendar and moves meetings around according to, when they're in their office or when they're working remotely. And those agents, again, are about making the human's job more efficacious, more efficient, making the human able to then focus on the higher priority tasks where you need that human brain, and using the AI for, frankly, the more boring tasks, the things that the human doesn't want to be doing. So you have, again, this individual who is sort of managing a mini team of agents that are enabling them to do their job better. And then the final phase, looking out into the future, and my view is that there isn't really any organizations in phase four. This is a future aspiration for more or less every business. But you then have what's called an agentic team, or a larger number of these agentic AI systems. Again, the human is the overseer, But now they're not really even managing the agents. The agents are able to sort of manage themselves and perform their functions just automatically from start to finish. They don't need the human to direct them on what to do. They will just go ahead and do the thing. So instead, what happens here is rather than being sort of the manager of the agents, the human is sort of the overseer. They're the orchestrator. They are looking down on a, imagine a bird's eye view of 20 agents running around doing particular tasks. The human is sort of the general of that army and managing those agents to perform those tasks. Sorry, overseeing the agents performing those tasks without necessarily having to input into every single individual agent. They're overseeing them all. And then, of course, redirecting the agent, giving instructions when appropriate. But again, it's completely sort of futuristic look, and frankly, we're not seeing really anybody in the industry doing this. But this is the narrative that the industry is working towards, and to me, it makes sense. Okay, if you can, we all will have amazing performers in our teams. What if we actually are able to enable them to perform to an even greater extent? Make them deliver higher quality work because they have this sort of agentic army working for them. You can imagine the productivity could be so much more. So again, the message here is do not replace the humans with AI. That's very short-sighted. Instead, augment the humans with AI. Make the humans more efficient at their job, and you'll get more productivity out of it. One of the reasons for that comment is that cost of AI is heavily subsidized for all of us right now. We do not know the true cost of using AI. Once all the big investment has dried up, if for those who think it's a bubble, when that bubble bursts, um, all these big companies that have put billions of dollars into AI systems are going to need to somehow return those investments to the investors. And when that bubble bursts, we as the consumers will be paying the bill. And if you've replaced all of your human team with an AI team, I would wager that the expense on that AI team will actually be more than a human team in the future. That's a very, very real possibility. So just shelter yourselves from the potential cost ramifications as well. Okay, so just to zone in on some examples of what agents might be able to achieve for us. So these are just made up metrics on screen, but it should give you an idea of some of the outcomes and objectives you should be trying to achieve. So what if a series of agents is able to reduce our operational overheads by 25% or even by 5%? It would be brilliant. What if they're able to improve employee satisfaction? Maybe your organization struggles to retain certain people in particular job roles. What if a series of AI agents actually massively increased employee satisfaction? That would be pretty handy. What if we could measure the number of hours in a week that our AI team has um, granted us some efficiency in? Again, that productivity time is huge. If we can measure that some way, we can report that up to the board, up to the C-suite, and evidence actually augmenting the humans with AI has enabled all of these kind of efficiencies, all of these savings, all of these improvements. And you could, capture some stats around it. That's what we do internally with our use of AI agents. So this is just some food for thought. Now, in terms of what I wanted to do then is think of agents that would be applicable to pretty much all of you in attendance. So these are not specific examples intended for you as individuals. These are general examples that I think any business could benefit from. So one is a HR onboarding agent. So what if we have an agent that automatically takes any new starters through their onboarding program? What if it directs them to phase one? You go and go and read and sign our organization documents. Okay, phase two, go ahead and set up your expense account. Phase three, reach out to these people and introduce yourself because the agent thinks they'd be good for your network. You could have an agent that basically runs every new starter through a step-by-step process, and that could be fully automated. Sounds pretty sensible, and I think any business could benefit from that. Similar things, so in terms of IT support, what if you had a service desk agent that performed the low-level tasks? Okay, you still have your human team to deal with the more complicated issues, but if there's something really simple, that can just be completely automated by AI, why wouldn't you have an agent to perform that function? If it's like I need to have a license assigned, the individual just raises a support ticket and then automatically the agent goes and assigns them a license. If you wanted a bit of a check and balance in that process, the agent could automatically contact their line manager. It could say, this person's requested this license. Can I assign it? The line manager clicks a button, yes or no, and the agent go ahead and assigns the license to the user. And it's taken, no real effort from any humans to do that. That's just one example. Executive reporting. So some of us need to report up to our seniors with information every week or every month. What if we have an agent that just goes and does it for us? It goes and collects all the work. It does the donkey work, right? It collates the data and generates a report. And then we just provide that report up to our managers. I mean, we would look really brilliant if we were able to do that. So, CyberOne, we operate a managed SOC service. We have developed a number of SOC agents that do various different functions within our SOC, and all of ultimately the outcome of all of those is to enable us to protect our customers more efficiently. So again, if you have a SOC internally or looking for one externally, agent usage within any security operations is very important. I won't go through all the rest one by one. Finance, customer support. So maybe you have a web portal where your customers log in and can raise support tickets externally. You can have an AI sort of chatbot, a fairly standard thing that we're seeing by all of the big, vendors out there now. Scheduling agents, I touched on this one earlier, something that can automatically reschedule calendars, things around joiners, movers, leavers, and even a sales agent, perhaps. Okay, so I want to get into the meat of this, and I want to talk about security risks because unfortunately there are some. AI is not just an opportunity, it is also a risk. And to explain what I mean by that, I wanted to define a few terms. So at the top of this diagram, we have identities as sort of a catch-all term. And there are multiple subtypes of identity. Those are namely human and non-human. So human obviously is your employees or your guests. Non-human are things like your service accounts in the olden days or service principals in the modern days. And as an offshoot of non-human identities, we have agentic identities. And this touches on the topic that when you're creating an agent, you need a way to manage it. And the best approach to that, and certainly the approach that Microsoft have taken, is every agent should have an identity. And that way, by managing the identity, you can perform governance over that identity. You can restrict its access. You can restrict its permissions or privilege. You can uh, easily offboard that identity. You can disable it temporarily. There's anything that you could do to a normal human user, you could do to an agentic identity. And that makes managing your agents far easier and it mitigates risks like agent sprawl. So this is a concept I wanted to introduce. It's something that Agent 365 does very well, and I'll talk more about that later. In terms of some other risks, just to highlight a couple. So on the left-hand side, there's sort of categories of risk, if you like, and I wanted to just do some basic mapping. So in terms of identity misuse, what if we have an overprivileged agent that is sort of running wild? It's got admin access and it's doing whatever it wants with no real safeguard. That would be a significant risk. In terms of data leakage, what if our AI agent is able to access sensitive data, PII, customer information, credit card data? Again, really bad. That agent, unless it is performing a function on that data and we intend for it to access that data, could be very dangerous. What if the agent sort of goes rogue? Okay, we're hearing this phrase rogue agents more and more. What if the agent goes rogue? You set it a task to complete, and in order to achieve that task, it thinks the best course of action is actually to upload all your data to the cloud. And that was sensitive data that you did not want uploading to the cloud. So we need a way to prevent those kind of behaviors. Shadow AI I touched on. So what if we have individuals in our businesses just creating agents right now? There's a very real likelihood, given the attendance on this call, that many of you actually will have employees who have created agents or are creating agents. And if you have not enforced any controls around that process, you don't know what those agents are doing, and they may already be doing things they shouldn't be. So we need a way to mitigate shadow AI. Simple lack of visibility. So, okay, you might know that an agent exists, but do you know what it's actually performing? What is its function? What instructions has that agent been given? Do you know how it's going to behave, or are you assuming you know how it's going to behave? Again, we need a way to have visibility over these things. And then excessive autonomy, similar to some of the ones I mentioned earlier, but what if an agent takes an unsafe action? And to actually give a real world example of this, I'm going to take you through a real scenario that we've seen in one of our customer environments, and I can give some more anecdotal ones at a later point. So imagine that you've created an agent, and that agent is a kind of cybersecurity agent. What you use it for is to generate root cause analysis reporting over any security alert or security incident that has taken place. Okay, so the job of the agent is to produce a report. That's its actual function. That's the goal. That's the outcome you want from it. And so you're going to give that agent a prompt. Okay, there's been a recent security incident. Go ahead and generate that report that I need. So what might the agent try and do? Remember, the agent is free thinking to an extent. It has a kind of intelligence. It's able to make decisions. And to achieve the outcome that you've set it, it will take sort of the path of least resistance to do that. Or it will take the route that it believes is efficient or correct. So one of the things it might do is go ahead and search public archives for any information about a similar incident that's been disclosed publicly in the past. And it will obviously look at internal sources as well. I think that's reasonable. It's a fair step the agents should take. And because you've told it actually to generate a root cause analysis, what the agent may think it needs to do is access the affected systems. So maybe you had a server that was compromised. The agent may then look to access that system so it can take logs from the server and then, perform some reporting around those logs. Okay, I think, again, probably a reasonable step. But what if we run into a barrier? What if the agent is not able to access that server? Its access gets blocked. Okay, does the agent just stop what it's doing? Unfortunately, it probably won't. It will try and find a way round that block. And what the agent might decide, again, it's free thinking, it's making its own decisions. It may decide that the best way for it to access that server is to escalate its access, is to find and use a privileged credential so that it can access that server. And you can see the problem. Okay, now the agent is performing its task, but to do so, it's taking a bad action. It's taking a sort of unethical action. So the agent continues on this kind of line of thinking. In step 3, it gets access to that privileged credential. And the way it's been able to do that is simply you haven't prevented it from doing so, and it's gone ahead and got a hold of an admin's credential. What it's then done is using that admin credential, it's disabled some of the security controls that were blocking its progress. So it knew that there was a barrier to accessing that affected system. It's just going to disable that barrier. It's going to remove that barrier so it can continue on its mission. So because of that, it now has access granted. So it can now complete what was originally step 2 and is now step 5 and go ahead and access that affected system. And now it's going to search around on that system looking for evidence of that security incident. It's going to then capture all of that evidence, and ultimately it will then produce that report that you asked it for. And so the outcome is correct. The result is correct. The agent has done what you asked it to do. It's produced that report, but the task was completed at any cost. Okay, the agent was intelligent enough to complete the task, but it was not intelligent enough to complete the task in an ethical and safe manner. And these are real scenarios that are happening right now. Like I said, we've seen a real one of these in a customer environment. And in fact, that's why they came to us, is they had this kind of rogue behavior, and it caused them a security incident. These red boxes are a security incident in and of themselves, and they came to us for some help on it. These are real things that we see. Anecdotally, internally, we also had something similar to this. Thankfully, because we did have the correct controls in place, no bad outcome happened. But the simple version is that one of our developers who's building some agents for us was testing one of the agents, and he was testing it in a dev environment. So it did not have access to any of our critical resources. It only had access to this very simple dev environment. And he set it a task to go and retrieve some information for him. And what it actually attempted to do is it attempted to leave the dev environment and access our corporate resources. Now, it wasn't able to do that because it was blocked. We had the right controls and governance in place, but it still attempted it. It still tried to leave the dev environment because it thought the most efficient way to achieve its goal, to achieve the task you set it, was to take that course of action. So we've seen this for real in our own environment. And like I said, this is going to happen more and more. The more agents that exist, the more this kind of rogue behavior will happen. And in a way, the agent is both intelligent and dumb. It's intelligent in that it's completing the mission, but it's dumb in the sense that it's taking bad courses of action to do so. And this risk, I think, is the ultimate risk when it comes to agents. The agent doing something you did not anticipate, and because you don't have the right controls or governance in place, the agent is just free to go and do what it wants. That's the real danger. Okay, so hopefully we all understand that risk. I think it's relatively intuitive. What I want to now talk about is Microsoft M365 E7, so the new license from Microsoft, and some of the things that it brings that we can use to mitigate the risks that we've learnt about today. So this is kind of the high level view. Within E7, you get everything within the lower level licensing, so E5. You then get something called the Entra Suite. You get Copilot Premium, and you also get Agent 365. I'll explain all of these momentarily. And underneath all of that is this thing called Work IQ, which is kind of a brain that sits in the back end of all of that. These are the things that you get within E7. Now, E7 is not cheap. List price, it's about $99 per user per month, which is about double the price of E5. So this is not a license for everybody. It is expensive, and there's no way of saying otherwise. I'll talk about who this license is for shortly. So just to expand on sort of what you get within the different Microsoft licensing tiers, and it is important to kind of break some of this out. So these are sort of the different pillars or different parts of the pyramid for different components of Microsoft licensing. So down at the bottom is E3. If you have Business Premium, it's a similar level of license to E3. So you get things like Entra P1, Defender for Endpoint P1, Windows Enterprise, and a few other things. Of course, you move up to E5, you get the P2 versions of the security tooling, you get a few extra tools. And then E7, like I said, there's like three major things you get. Agent 365, Copilot Premium, and the Entra Suite. So what are those things? I'm going to spend a bit of time explaining those three bits at the top. So E7, the way it's marketed by Microsoft is as a frontier suite. It's the idea of moving beyond just a Copilot, beyond that traditional AI, and looking at agentic AI instead. So it's designed for organizations that are ready to use agentic AI. And of course, that is not everybody. Not all of us are at that stage, but that's kind of how it's positioned and marketed. So in terms of breaking down those three major sort of components you get, Agent 365 then is around providing what's called a control plane for your agents. So if you have 100 agents all running around doing different things, Agent 365 is kind of the single pane of glass for those agents. It's where you can monitor what the agents are doing, you can monitor the usage, you can implement some security controls around the agents as well. It's kind of that security portal, but for your agents. That's the idea of Agent 365. We've then got Copilot Premium. So this is where you have not just the sort of base level of Copilot, M365 Copilot, Copilot Chat, for example. You get individual copilots for the individual Microsoft products. So there's a copilot for Outlook, there's a copilot for Word, for Teams, for SharePoint, basically one for all of the productivity suite. And those copilots are designed to work explicitly with Outlook. So it's a copilot for Outlook rather than a generic copilot. Again, I'll elaborate on this shortly. And then the Entra suite. There's actually quite a lot in here. So Entra Private Access and Entra Internet Access. Those are the equivalents to Zscaler's ZAA and ZPA. They're the Microsoft equivalent solutions. So think SASE, think that secure edge, those kind of toolings. That is what those are for. Yes, they're branded as Entra, which many of us just automatically assume it's identity related. And it's not quite true for the Entra suite. Okay, it's a broader suite. It includes, like I said, EPA and EIA. You also get verified ID in there, as well as some governance add-ons. I'll talk in a bit more detail on those shortly. So just back to Agent 365 then. Like I said, it's the control plane for AI agents. The core functionality and the benefits of it really are, it's around seeing what agents even exist in your company. So let's say you're not using Agent 365, but your employees have been creating agents. Well, if you were to use Agent 365, you would obviously then get retrospective visibility over those agents, and it would allow you to discover that use of shadow AI. You can register your agents directly in it, and this works for third-party systems. So if you've got agents in something like Codex or any other AI solution out there, well, actually, you can register third-party AI systems in Agent 365 and have visibility over those as well. So pretty good integration with third parties there. Very important, obviously. Like I said earlier, monitoring of usage of agents. So who's building them? What are they building them for? What is the agent actually doing? Is there any latent risks with the agents? Have they been given excessive permissions? What do the agents have access to? All of that visibility is possible through Agent 365. Now, it also has some integration with things like Entra, Purview, and Defender. I was on an NDA session with Microsoft last week. They're building obviously I can't say much about it, but they're building a new capability in Defender that works with Agent 365 and provides a deep level of security insight into what those agents are doing. I probably can't say more than that, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm implying there. So Agent 365, it's that security control plane for AI agents. We then in E7, we get Copilot Premium. So like I said, beyond just the standard use of Copilot, you get specific copilots for particular functions. So Copilot in Teams, Copilot in Word, Copilot Studio, which is very great. Copilot Studio is one of the ways that you can actually create an agent within the Microsoft ecosystem. It's a low code approach, so you don't need to be a developer to create an agent with Copilot Studio. So it's a nice tool to have if you're not particularly technical. Down at the bottom actually is something that many people oversee or actually don't even know exists, but there is something called Copilot Analytics, which will enable you to measure the usage of traditional AI, or Copilot, as I refer to it, traditional AI, and actually measure the usage of it. So you can see who in your organization is an excessive user of Copilot chat, for example. What data are they uploading into Copilot chat? What questions are they asking? What documents are they generating? All of that is available through the Copilot Analytics tool. So worth a look over there as well. Just moving on to the Entra suite. Again, there's quite a lot to unpack here. So Entra ID itself is, of course, the identity and access management platform. That's part of the suite. Entra Identity Governance. Again, that's part of the identity sort of platform. It's around identity lifecycle management. Then we come on to the third bullet point, Entra Internet Access. So this is basically a secure web gateway. Okay, it's the equivalent of Zscaler's ZIA, does the same function. This is just in the Microsoft ecosystem. Below that, we have Entra Private Access. Again, the equivalent to Zscaler's ZPA. And this is all around Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA. Apologies for the acronyms. There's quite a few here. So ZTNA, think of it like an advanced VPN. It's sort of a next-gen VPN. That's what private access is all about. Now, those two tools, internet access and private access, you may think, why did Microsoft bundle them into their E7 suite, which is kind of focused on AI? I don't see the link here. The link is actually very important. So, through a combination of internet access and private access, we can help put guardrails around our AI agents. So, going back to one of my examples earlier, if I set my AI agent a task and it thinks the best way to achieve the task is to upload all my corporate data to the internet somewhere, to some file sharing website maybe, uh, Entra Internet Access can block that. It's part of the guardrails for protecting our AI agents and restricting what they can do. That's why it's bundled in here. That's why the Entra suite is here. Coming back to my earlier point as well, I mentioned that every AI agent should have an identity associated with it. Again, that's the linkage, okay? That's why Entra is important, both from an identity perspective and also that internet kind of SASE, secure service edge component as well. So that's why it's part of the E7 bundle. All right, so how can CyberOne help you? So I've given you some bad news around the risks, around those AI agents running away and doing dangerous things. How can we help you with that problem? So we're releasing a new service that we call Assure AI. It is an AI risk assessment in simple terms. So it is a series of workshops led by some of our consultant team where they will challenge your stakeholders on how you are securing AI, and they will challenge you on what you believe the key threats of AI are. So the idea in station one here is we map the external AI threats and the internal AI threats based on your organization's sort of security posture and risk appetite. And we start to rate them, and that's done mutually. So our team will provide their opinion, your team will be asked your opinion, and together we'll reach an agreement on what we believe the risk level is like for your organization. And this is done dynamically in the workshop. So this diagram gets built up live on the session, live in the Teams call or live in person. And we could sort of workshop these ideas together to build up what we believe the key threats for your organization are. What we then look to do is map your strengths and weaknesses against the NCSC's maturity scale. So where we think actually you're doing a good job in securing certain risks, we might put those in the comprehensive tier. But where maybe there's sort of no control or minimal control, those may go in the basic tier. And again, it's done conversationally. We workshop this together. We provide our opinion, you provide yours, and we agree how sort of mature we think you are when it comes to your different AI controls. And again, we map this out live in the session. We build up the diagram live in the session. Now, there's more than just these two stations. There's 5 of them in total. And we go through all of these live in the flesh together. And the output ultimately is together we have assessed your AI risk and we've plotted a remediation plan on how to minimize and reduce that risk. That's the high level outcome. So this is a new service. It's modeled off an existing service that we have. So we've refactored something that we already deliver and have delivered dozens of times into an AI version to produce our Assure AI risk assessment. So if this is something that you believe would be of help, please reach out and one of the team will get in touch with you. Now, beyond that, this, of course, is sort of agnostic to technology. It's looking at your entire organization, not just the Microsoft world. But if you do need help, particularly in the Microsoft world, we've got 2 services that can be delivered as either professional service or managed services. Those are Copilot as a service and Agent 365 as a service. So in the purple quotes there, you can see which of them might be appropriate to you. So if you're earlier in your adoption of AI and you're looking at those traditional AI models, you're looking at using Microsoft Copilot, and you want to make sure that your data is kept secure, but you want to enable your users to benefit from Copilot? Well, that's what we provide in Copilot as a service. We help you adopt Copilot, we help you secure your data, we help you govern the use of Copilot in the right way, we help you manage all of that. On the right-hand side, then, Agent 365 as a service. So if you're looking in the future, you're building AI agents right now, or you're planning to very soon, or maybe you're just concerned that the cat is already out the bag and there's people in your organization already building out these agents, then this service is for you. Okay, so the idea is we will help build agents with you. We'll actually create agents together to perform particular functions. And we'll do that in a secure and well-governed way. We'll make sure all the right governance and controls are in place. So we'll help you with things like Entra private access, Entra internet access with Agent 365. We'll make sure that we are securing those AI agents and minimizing the potential damage they could do. So the scenario that I walked you through earlier shouldn't happen. That's what the purpose of that service is. So I'll just bring a little bit more information up on screen. But if you need assistance with either of these topics, again, feel free to reach out. These are services that we can provide as professional or managed services to help your organizations. Brilliant. So just to close out the session then, I wanted to highlight two upcoming events that we're running. So on the left-hand side is our customer event. So if you are a current customer or a potential new customer of ours, you are absolutely free to attend this in-person event hosted in London in June. There's a registration link on screen, but you will be receiving that via email as well. You can also just reach out to one of our team and we can register for you on your behalf. So please consider attending that event. We'll be talking all about agentic AI in greater detail. We'll also be talking about some of the innovations that we've produced internally in a kind of private closed session. And you'll learn about how we have leveraged AI and agentic AI to ultimately improve how we operate as a business. So some really great insights there. And there's also some drinks available. Doesn't hurt in a nice summer days as well. And on the right-hand side, our partner event. So if you are a current partner of ours or a future partner, then again, we have an event specifically for yourselves. Again, in London, this one is in July. Again, there'll be drinks available and we can register you on behalf of yourself. You can feel free to put comments in the chat if you'd like us to. And again, the focus will be around a combination of secure innovation. So what CyberOne does to innovate our organization to provide more advanced security services for our customers and our partners. And also, obviously, we'll be talking about AI and agentic AI as well. So all hot topics. I'm sure Mythos will make an appearance in both of those sessions as well. And then finally, if you like virtual content, then we have an upcoming webinar around data security in an AI-driven world. I touched on very briefly how we want to make sure that any AI conversation is also a data security conversation. So this is coming up in June. So again, feel free to comment in the chat. We can register on your behalf, or just go to our website or click on the link that you'll receive after this session and register. It'd be great to see you there. So with all of that said, thank you for your time today. I appreciate your attention on this very warm afternoon in the UK. Brilliant. Thank you for your time, everyone.